Okay, so welcome everybody to the outreach and mentoring session for the GA. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so the microphone's working. So I'm glad you all came, and I'm really interested to have some interesting discussions here. So the session kind of came out of two things, and so that's why we put two things into one, because they do have, so outreach in what we're talking about here is how we as an association, what things, initiatives we can do to go out and contact, to make contact with community, especially focusing on children and schools, and how we can promote science and science education and STEM. And we have some initiatives which we're working on, and we also want to have a discussion about larger ideas. And then the mentoring, we will talk a bit about mentoring in general. We have Mike Rogers from the Commission, who will give a nice overview of mentoring, and Viktoria from the GEMI program, and Beghelli from the Emma, who's been working on mentoring within the Emma program. And also, it's not on here, but one of our board members, Maria Gorna, she's actually just agreed to take over the task force for our mentoring platform. So, but first, I'd like to start with an introduction about outreach. And one of the reasons that we're actually interested in doing this is we don't have any formal outreach working group or at the moment. We have a few initiatives which we're working on, and I think for the MCAA it's quite valuable for us to talk to experts and some of our partners about outreach. And we want to, the outcome of this session is to try and collect ideas on how we can move forward with organizing outreach activities through our board, through our chapters and working groups. So I will just start right away with introducing Micaela Crespo from the Policy Working Group, and Annalisa Beghelli and Kelly Barrales-Saylor. Maybe if you could come up here and talk. They're going to talk about the My Super Science Heroes project and book publishing. Okay, please be careful. These chairs are interesting. I'll do it. You tell me. Yeah. This one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you. Actually, the book project started back in early 2017. It was born from an idea from Marco Mazia, which if you're MCAA members, you probably know. And he said, yeah, we need to self-fund ourselves. We need to find some ways of getting some revenue. Why not do something for kids? And he gave me this idea, and I said, okay, let's go for it. I was unemployed at the time, so I had a lot of time on my hands. And we decided to go for a book for kids, and starting with Marie Curie, because we're the Marie Curie Alumni Association. So we opened up some sort of, it was like a contest. We were looking for ideas and for illustrations. And so we opened it up, and we received a bunch of emails or entries for ideas on the book and on the series, because the idea was to make a series of books, and also a bunch of illustrations. And these, that was a winner. The illustrator was a winner. So Annalisa was who we picked for the for the images. We really liked her previous work, and actually from the first project that you sent to us, it changed quite a bit in the meantime. But the spirit and the I would say the flavor is still there. So we chose Annalisa and Carla, who unfortunately couldn't be here. She's in the US now, who's the writer and who came up with the My Super Science Heroes idea. And this idea would be to have scientists, normal scientists, have a superpower, which is actually a characteristics of researchers. In this case, it was persistence. So for the first book, we went for persistence as a superpower. After that, we said, okay, we need to fund this project first. How are we going to do that? And the communications working group, that's why Matthew thought of that, agreed to lend us, it was 5,000 euro, I think, at a time, to fund the whole project, which was probably not, it wasn't enough. So we needed to do something with those 5,000 euros. It was a lot of money. Thank you. We're a communications working group for the for the confidence. Yeah, it was good. It was good. And so we thought of investing that money into a crowdfunding campaign. And so we worked a lot. So if any one of you is thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign, it's a lot of work, a lot of work. And with that money, we pretty much financed the illustration, the writing, manager who told us more or less what to do with the campaign, pretty much that part of the project. And we were hoping that it would reach the minimum amount that we were asking, because if we didn't reach it, then the whole project would die and we would have lost 5,000 euros. But luckily enough, we went over the limit. So the lower limit was 15,000 euros and we raised 18,315, most of which come from the MCAA. So thank you, MCAA. If any of you pledged in the campaign, thank you. Don't worry, the book is coming. I know you're here because of that, so trust me, it's coming. And so it was good. The campaign went well, and it was so good that it attracted the attention of a publisher in the US, who is Sourcebooks. And so Kelly here, approached us and told us, "Oh, that's a very nice idea. Would you like to work with us?" And so we said yes, and now I'll let you speak.
Hi, I am Kelly Barrales-Saylor. I work with Sourcebooks. We are an independent publishing company just outside of Chicago in Illinois, in the United States. I am the editorial director of children's nonfiction, so my job is to acquire and publish nonfiction books for children. And it's something that I'm very passionate about because I do believe in our company motto, which is books change lives. One of the first projects that I acquired in my mission to find science books for children was a series by a physicist, here we go, Quantum Physics for Babies. This was a series that we published starting in about 2017, yes. So we started publishing this in about 2017, and because it was written by a scientist for children, it turned me on to the idea of finding other experts in the field who could speak very specifically to subject matter that I know nothing about. I have an English degree, and I like art, so that's why I make children's books. And the success of this series had me on the hunt for things that could also work in this type of space. And I came across the MCAA project, and it seemed so intriguing to me because it's backed by scientists with real science. Annalisa's artwork is beautiful, and Carla's interpretation of the story was something that really caught my eye. There are plenty of biographies about Marie Curie in the world, but there is nothing that treats the subject matter in this way. So that unique perspective is going to really appeal to children, parents, and people who maybe would not have thought to pick up a biography of a scientist. So we approached the MCAA to start talking about it, and we also had a lot of interest from our buyers. So places in the United States like Barnes & Noble, which is a national bookseller, they were very excited about this project, which meant we had to make it along with their timeline and what they believe is the right time for the book to come out. So it has been an interesting struggle, challenge, to coordinate the expectations, because you all had the Indiegogo campaign with its own timeline, but to adhere that to a publishing timeline, sometimes that does change things. But it's been a wonderful process. I have learned so much about Marie Curie. And I think as you've seen, the illustrations have brought such a wonderful twist to the way that this book came about and the story that's being told. So, Annalisa, if you want to talk about how you approached the style.
Yes, of course. Before speaking about the illustration style, I would like to spend some words in what this book was since the origin, because what I really loved of this project is the way we choose to speak about Marie Curie. It's not a biography, or it's only a simplified version of a biography, but the way we choose to speak about this superpower is in the story is the link between the two main characters of the story, that are Marie Curie and Nemesis character. Nemesis is a sort of little monster who lives in a cave, and he wants to make people ignorant, yes, ignorant. And when he knew Marie Curie was born, he sent a little minion. This minion, this is called Mr. O, Mr. Opposition, to fight with Marie Curie and avoid his growth like a scientist. So this is a funny character. Nemesis maybe is and Mr. O are maybe the real protagonist of the books, because we know what Marie Curie did, but how she was able to do it. And in this battle against these two characters is the core theme of the book. So I really love this version and this idea. So I took part at the competition first, and then we are building the final version of the book with Carla. And I was really funny by drawing Mr. O, because it is not scary, but it has to be funny, even because we are speaking to very little children, so we don't have to make them scary. And I don't know if you have some illustration of the book. No, it's not easy to speak about an images without seeing it.
Everybody knows you need to be bitten by
Volume?
a radioactive spider to be a superhero.
No, you don't.
The Marie Curie Alumni Association presents My Super Science Heroes, an exciting new picture book series that depicts science as it really is. An epic adventure complete with superheroes and villains.
Do you know who Marie Curie was? Yes! She was a super scientist.
The first book, Marie Curie and the Power of Persistence, is written and illustrated as a dynamic superhero story.
Did she have superpowers? Yes, the power of persistence.
Children are exposed to role models that rely on supernatural powers that they cannot relate to. This series shows them that their personality traits, such as curiosity, persistence, critical thinking, and creativity, can indeed become a superpower and be used to save the day too. This book and many exclusive extras can be yours during our Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. The book and campaign will be packed with unique features. Key concepts are highlighted throughout the text and explained in a clear glossary at the end of the book. Mr. Opposition loves to follow Mary everywhere she goes. Children will have a blast trying to find him hiding in each page. The impact of Marie Curie's life and discoveries on our everyday lives are summarized together with further resources that parents can explore with their kids. If you pre-order your copy on Indiegogo, you'll also be able to get the ebook, coloring pages, experiments to do at home, coffee cups to keep your energy up while experimenting with your kids, and lab books to note every important discovery you make. There's also a school kit available that includes 10 copies of the book, more experiments to do in class, and a teacher's guide to help introduce kids to STEM. At the Marie Curie Alumni Association, we want to inspire and empower the next generation of scientific thinkers through the power of storytelling. This beautifully illustrated picture book will take your kids with Mary as society and limitations threatened to block her progress. Determined to become educated and successful, Marie Curie persisted.
Did she win? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out.
Yes, this is an early phase of drawing the books. Now is quite different, but what is important to say is that the character of Nemesis changed during during time the story, because at first it is bigger than Marie Curie, because he is stronger than her, and then he gets smaller as she as her persistence go stronger in the story and his life. So at the end of the story, when he recognizes that he can't fight against her, Nemesis becomes friend of Marie Curie, and he also supported her when she received Nobel Prizes. So is a particular fight between them, but it is a real core and a real idea, because all these values are very important to be shared with kids today. And what is at least a battle in real life, if not in the way we can win against problems. So I hope you will enjoy with the final version of the book. And thank you for being here.
All I can say is it's been a very exciting and yeah, great project, with ups and downs, with excitement, a lot of stress during the campaign, but it was a nice ending. And we keep working with Sourcebooks. We're already brainstorming for future chapters or future volumes. So do tune in, because very soon you'll have news about this book, and then probably the next. I don't know if I can say that, but I just have Carla wanted to be here, the writer of the book and the one who came up with the idea of the superheroes, but she couldn't. She's in Chicago right now. Maybe she's watching us. I don't know. But she's asked, hi, Carla. She's asked me to say that it's been a real pleasure working with MCAA in this project, and that she's grateful for the opportunity of being a partner with such talented scientists, artists, and dreamers in pursuit of such an important initiative, that of promoting science and making it accessible to young minds over the world. And that as we prepare the launch of Marie Curie and the Power of Persistence into the world, she wants to thank everyone who supported us in bringing this idea to fruition. And it's a testament to the power of persistence. And that she looks forward to bringing many more other super science books to life with this great team. Thank you, Carla. And thank you. If I think there's Joana who's coming now, right?
Okay, thank you very much. This is, yeah, please, yes. Yeah. Okay, so we will ask Joana Moscoso from Native Scientists to come and talk about her project and her initiative, and then we'll have a panel discussion. You can ask questions. So where do you want to? Okay, it's okay.
You good there? I can't go. Wait. Disaster. Well, I'll just do it here. Hi, hello. Thanks for the invitation, first of all. I'm going to talk about Native Scientists, a project that I founded together with Tatiana, another scientist. And to start this story, the story of the project, it links a little bit with my personal story. So I grew up in a small village in the north of Portugal, in the middle of green mountains. And my parents owned a restaurant, so I grew up among codfish, chupa chups, potatoes, and all those things that a restaurant has. And when I learned about bacteria in school at the age of 9, I became fascinated with bacteria. And by the age of 12, I knew I wanted to be a scientist to study the living organisms that we cannot see. The problem was that at the age of 12, in a small village where there were no scientists, no higher education institutions, or things like this, everyone was looking at me like, you're crazy, what do you want to be? You know, like, go be a banker or go be a doctor, not a scientist. So I grew with a bit of frustration about this, but very passionate about my bacteria that we couldn't see. So eventually I went to university and I studied microbiology and ended up doing my PhD at Imperial College in London. And while I was in London, I had this thing inside me that I didn't want other kids to feel the same barrier to science that I felt. So I started to go to London schools to talk about science or microbiology to these kids. And eventually I met Tatiana and we realized that actually, I'm Portuguese, actually the Portuguese people, kids in London schools were among the poorest achievers. So I was a little bit shocked about it, and we went to research a little bit about this, and we found out that actually for science and maths, 40% of migrant kids in Europe are underachievers, compared with a rate of 16% among the non-migrant kids in schools. So 40% of achievement for science and maths for the migrant kids in general in Europe. So we started to do something about it and connecting international researchers with migrant kids to try to raise their aspirations. So when you try to look into the reasons why this happens, there are multiple factors that can account for this underachievement, including language barriers, issues of prejudice and perceptions towards the heritage culture, and the lack of adequate support in schools for these migrant kids. And the truth is that the majority of the migrant kids in school manage a home language and a school language, and they do not receive any support on home language learning, wasting the potential to become multilingual and sometimes putting at risk the communication with their parents and grandparents and other relatives from the heritage country. Yet, we are all very mobile, very international researchers, so we do understand the value of languages, and the job market also understands that. So 8 in 10 employers believe that foreign language skills are important, so we should be fostering multilingualism. And we also know that the world of tomorrow will need professionals with science skills, or the very widely used STEM acronym for STEM, technology, engineering, and maths. So, and in addition to this, we also know that being diverse gives us a competitive edge. So we should foster more the empowerment of these migrant people.
So, Native Scientist was born with this vision to bring forward the day where everyone can reach their full potential, no matter what their background is. And our mission is to drive a societal change where, first of all, both girls and boys think that becoming a scientist is a real viable option. Number two, that science communication to the general public is natural for us scientists, not extra work. And number three, that multilingualism and multiculturalism is accepted and celebrated by all in society. So, how do we, in terms of making this real, how do we do it? So we created this concept of STEM, science, plus language workshops, where kids talk about science in a different language with real-world scientists. And usually we use the native language of the scientists and the heritage language of the kid. Currently, our core work inspires migrant kids across Europe to higher education and science subjects and careers. And it also trains the international researchers in science communication for the general public, in specific for children who manage more than one language. Our method is centered on the people, and we make the bridge between these kids and the researchers, and we empower these kids by increasing their science capital, their exposure to science, and by promoting their heritage language. Depending on your heritage culture, sometimes speaking your heritage language for a normal kid can be something they are ashamed of rather than proud of. And we need to change this mindset because really it's a superpower to be multilingual. So. And for the researchers, we want to improve their communication skills because it's really important to communicate our science to our peers, but it's also important to give it to society because the knowledge belongs to everybody. And by going to schools and talking to these kids and raising their aspirations, you're adding a social dimension to your work. So you're working in the lab and making a social impact, even if your research does not translate into industry and an application that goes to be commercialized later. So we developed two programs. We started with the Native Schools program, the first one. And we're very conscious about impact evaluation. And after 2 years, we arrived to the conclusion that we needed to develop a second program. So now we have a program for kids below 12 years old, which are workshops of approximately 1.5 hours. And we have a program for teenagers, which are longer workshops and have the higher impact for this group age. And all the work we do is based on these three pillars, promoting science learning, language learning, and a role model interaction. So the kids meet role models during our workshops. And currently, we reach more than 1,000 kids per year. We engage with more than 200 scientists per year, and we are present in 6 European countries. And we do workshops in 10 different languages, so for 10 different heritage languages. Our format is in speed dating, so for every workshop we bring together 4 or 5 scientists, and this also gives the opportunity to the scientists to meet like-minded people in the country where they live. Sometimes when you move to a country, you move alone and you don't know anyone, and so this can also be a good platform to meet people and start making some friends. And then these are the Native Explorers program, which usually, so the Native Schools programs takes the scientists out of their labs and into schools. The Native Explorers program takes the kids out of the school and puts them in the labs or museums with the scientists. And the feedback we are having is very good, and it really touches my heart. We have, for example, this statement from a teacher that wrote to us saying our students thoroughly enjoyed the native scientist workshop, including those who can be a bit reluctant to learn. I was very impressed with the design of the workshop, as well as the skills of the scientists in engaging our students in their research. And then we also have the feedback from the kids. We have like girls that are aged 15, and they say, like, imagine a Portuguese or a French kid born to Portuguese parents in Paris saying, oh, this was really good because I thought the university in France was only for the French people. So there is really a gap, and I don't think we know the reality because we are not there, we are not in the schools, we are not talking to these people. But the truth is that sometimes migrant kids live in a bubble and they don't have full access to the information of the host country or full access to the information from the heritage country. So they don't know exactly the possibilities that they have. But of course, this depends on your heritage culture. We don't see the same for like German heritage speakers or something like that, okay? And we see that even 6 months after the workshop, 75% of the kids recognize that they've learned new scientific concepts. Almost half of them say that they were inspired to become a scientist, and more than half of them meet a scientist for the first time in their lives during the workshop. Importantly, kids after the workshop feel prouder of speaking more than one language rather than ashamed, which is the case for some communities. And the scientists also report positive outcomes. They recognize it's an asset for their career, it's a way to meet new people, and it boosts their self-satisfaction and self-confidence. So we didn't have weddings yet from people who met through native scientists, but we have people dating. One day. We have babies, though. So apart from the native schools and the native explorers program, which I focused, of course, we also have some sort of book, but very like naively made. It's about stories of scientists. And then we have the native training program, which is online training for the scientists who participate in the workshops to tell them how they can make outreach with impact. So special techniques and tricks that you can use to be more impactful when you do outreach. And then we have the research stream as well, because we want to measure the impact we are having. So we're collaborating with social scientists to measure the impact of and the effectiveness of the workshops. And sometimes we do campaigns or other type of missions to raise awareness about multilingualism. And there are multiple ways for people to get involved, from becoming a mentor, a volunteer that goes to schools, to a coordinator, a collaborator, or institutions who can become diversity champions. And I don't know how am I doing with time? Okay, so I'll skip these. Why bother? I think we all, if you are here, is because you know why you should bother. But you know, going from engaging with the local community to fostering STEM education. And we've been working with a lot of different organizations and institutions, from universities, embassies, to societies and the schools themselves. And of course, I couldn't be here without all the people that is with us. Our database has 1,000 scientists, and we have a big team. Most of us work on a volunteer basis. Now, this wouldn't be a discussion, maybe this can then lead the discussion. We've worked hard to get where we are, and we're proud of this, but there were struggles and lots of sleepless nights during the implementation of this project. So the biggest struggles faced until now were lots of unpaid work done outside normal working hours, especially for me and Tatiana. Lots of unsuccessful grant applications, which take many hours to prepare. Very low continuity. So the grants that we receive and the funding that we have is usually just for 1 year. So it's very hard to plan and think on the long-term success. And at the beginning, when we started, we were just pure scientists in the lab. So we had no contacts with the key players that we needed to have to make this work. And it was a little bit difficult to understand how to approach them at the beginning. After 5 years, we start to get comfortable with it, okay? Now, looking into the future, the biggest challenge we have ahead is to build capacity, to be able to have staff working to manage all the workshops that we make. And then if we have staff, how we can retain these staff and how we can promote their own career development. Find financial self-sustainability. We are a non-profit enterprise registered in the UK, which is a problem at the European level right now, but let's put that aside. So we want this project to live even if I want to step away or Tatiana wants to step away, and a project that is healthy is able to continue if it's self-sustainable. So we're trying to find a business model that works. And also we need to promote more health work-life balance, because we don't want outreach to be a source of poor health for the scientists. So this is important. And of course, as we grew from organizing 3 workshops in a year to 50 workshops in a year. And so the governance structure needs to adapt to this increase in operations. And that's it. Thank you very, no, there is this. Thank you very much. But I just wanted to leave you with a question. Do you think that Marie Curie would be a native scientist? Because when we read about her story, we thought she would probably be. She always was very adamant of keeping her surname, her Polish surname, and she also kept the relationships with her heritage country, Poland, very strongly, and then she even founded an institute and so on. So maybe we all can have that impact. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is really inspiring, actually. And we just signed a partnership agreement to start to do projects together with native scientists, and really excited about it. And some of the topics you talk about, they relate to scientists in general, especially the negatives that you mentioned. It's exactly like being in a PhD program. And also being a non-profit. I think you talked about some things there. But I actually wanted to ask the audience if you have any questions. Please don't hesitate to ask them. Yeah, I'll start back here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So it is a question and a comment for the last speaker. So apart from being at the European Platform of Women Scientists, I am in French associations that are doing similar job with respect to kids. Not the language part, but the rest of it. So maybe privately we could speak about that.
Thank you. My question is for Joana. I was wondering, what is the background of scientists that you mobilize for preparing your workshops? Because specifically, I wanted to know if those that you get in touch with and that are motivated are coming from academia or from other sectors. Because it's true that engaging children in science is fine, but though, voilà. Also, a very small question afterwards. Usually children from migrants are a minority, and I wanted to know how do you handle that so that you have a critical mass of children to speak in whatever mother tongue. Thank you.
We only have one walking microphone, so I'll just run back and forth. Okay.
So the most of the people who go to the schools to talk are from academia, and 70 to 75% are women. So we actually need to fight for diversity so that we have more males. I think it's normal in the voluntary sector to have more females than men. So yes, academia is the main source. And then in terms of going to the schools, what happens is that sometimes these minorities, they are either organized with a Saturday language school or some after-school classes of that language. And so we target those groups. We still go to that school, but we target those specific groups of kids who already attend language classes of the heritage language. When this is not available, we just pick a Monday morning, we find a free venue, and we put posters in restaurants from that community, and we organize a workshop.
Okay, there's a question back here.
Because you're really success. It's something very nice. One question for Joana and the others people too. So first, Joana, is it possible do you have something in Germany about these native scientists? There is a group in Germany. Okay, so I will contact them. And the second is, which is the next book?
So it's a secret, the next book. But one thing that we do in publishing is a little bit scientific in trying to find research in what subject matter someone would like to hear next. So even if we think it's the most exciting story, it still has to resonate with the people that are actually going to buy the books. So that's part of why we can't tell you right now, because we're still conducting some of the research to find the best subject matter and best storytelling to present that subject matter.
Actually, I have a follow-up question about that. Maybe not to say that, ask exactly what the next books will be, but the idea was originally is to have a series about science heroes. So will this follow the same trajectory? Will it be a series? Okay, that's good. Okay.
First of all, for Joana, I'm in the field of immigration studies, so it warmed my heart when I heard this story, and we can talk later on because I'm first in immigration and integration funding. For the book, also in the light of what we heard about multilingualism, I was wondering, do you have plans of actually having this book in Europe, in other language than English?
It's a great question. I'll speak to, I know the English edition will be distributed widely around the world. We also have, so on the business side, we have a rights director at Sourcebooks who travels to international book fairs, and we sell the publishing rights and work with foreign publishers to create books in different languages. In just a few weeks, I will be in Italy at the Bologna Book Fair, which is strictly children's books, and we meet with publishers all around the world who are interested in bringing these types of books to other countries in other languages.
So it may happen if some other countries show their interest. And I might just say that during the campaign, I received a lot of volunteer people saying, I would like to translate this to Croatian, and really like not the main European languages, but a lot of different languages. So there is indeed the interest. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Maybe two. Is anybody? Oh, go ahead, Clara.
So congratulations on the book. It's really a great idea. I have a daughter, and I was always looking for materials to work with her around science, so it was good. Just from an educational psychologist point of view, I thought the idea of having this hero made more human, with human characteristics, was a great idea, because then it makes it more tangible. You can reach it. The second thing, maybe you can think to kind of integrate it to the next or whatever in the future, that I've read something about it, is that some people think these traits are you're born with it. They're fixed. You are creative. You are intelligent. If you're not born like that, then you are not going to reach that, even though it's human. So maybe to kind of make it feel like everybody can learn that. Creativity can be developed. You can learn to be persistent. You can, so yeah.
Yeah, what you're talking about is along the lines of the study of growth mindset. And that's something that we as an organization at Sourcebooks, we believe in growth mindset, that anybody can do anything. And that's what I love about the way that Carla and Annalisa have created this character, is that she could be you. She was born the same way everybody else was. She had no benefits that were given to her, and so she made this happen herself just from her own persistence. And I think that's a wonderful message to have to children, that you can do anything. Even the story you told of growing up in a restaurant. I grew up with parents who never went to college. My father was an immigrant, and we were told, well, get a job. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I think it's something that is very important to show children of all ages and generations that these powers, you don't have to fly, you just have to be persistent.
There is a study that the title is Even Einstein Struggled, where they had 3 groups of kids, and they told the story of Einstein from 3 different perspectives. The perspective that he is a genius and everything was great, the perspective of something that I don't remember, and then the perspective that was Einstein struggled and had problems, but even though he had problems, he managed to find this, and that. And the learning was way more effective, and the self-perception as a scientist from the kids was way more effective with the 3rd group, because the kids could relate to him.
Okay, thank you very much. I wish that we could continue this discussion, and I'm already thinking we will definitely have a longer session at the next GA. So thank you once again. Please give a round of applause. And I just want to ask if Mike Rogers is here. Yes, if you can come up. Thank you. One thing that was mentioned, I just say while we're transitioning, I'm also from the US, and my parents are also from a family of immigrants. And this is true about losing your language and being ashamed. In the US, I think in the early 20th century, a lot of immigrants were really discouraged to speak their native language because they wanted to fit in. And so I don't speak Italian. My parents don't speak Italian, exactly. And it is a shame, actually, that kids or families who are in migration are forced. I don't think that might be happening in other places, but it's just an example of this effect. Okay, so now we want to switch over to mentoring. And I'm very happy to have Mike Rogers begin with a bit of an overview of what is mentoring, what it means to him and what it means to us. And Mike is an honorary member of the MCAA. He was a long time employed with the European Commission and really had the vision to start the MCAA, this project. So, wait. Do you want this? No, it doesn't. Tell me and I'll switch the slides.
Okay. Well, thank you. When Matthew said I'm from the Commission, I'm from the Commission a long time ago. But the reason I take an interest in this is for the last 4 or 5 years, I was the backstop, and this is a much maligned word. I was the backstop for the help desk. Now, the Marie Curie program is the only program in the European Commission framework program for research that involves a massive amount of individuals who are all native scientists, because they're all taken from one country where you're comfortable, you put into another country, another context, another language where you have problems. And as a result, we had over 200 to 300 questions a week that the project officer couldn't resolve, that your university couldn't resolve, and the questions that couldn't be resolved normally then came to me, and I set my mind to it that we would make an effort, at least through the Alumni Association, to provide a system whereby things would be trapped before they became a crisis. So I want to talk a little bit about the mentoring structure, because it is becoming more important, and these are the things that I'm going to cover. So we go straight to what's a mentor. Well, it's somebody who's actually more experienced in the context in which you work, not necessarily in the science that you work, because you'll have your supervisor anyway, you'll have your principal investigator, but somebody who's au fait with the system and the environment in which you work, because you suddenly arrive, particularly if you're arriving from another continent, you have another structure. I live in Belgium. It's bad enough when you go from one side of Brussels to the other, because suddenly you're following science to Mons and it changes to Bergen, and you think, where the hell am I? You're in the same city. The culture changes can be from one street to the other. So the experience is very important in the terms of the context, and the also experience is important in the terms of the mobility context. And now, fortunately, due to 20, 30 years of the framework program, we're in a situation where many of your principal investigators are themselves people who've experienced mobility. What's a mentor? Well, this is really an ideal list. Of course, he's a good listener. He has no personal motivation or interest in promoting that other than seeing you comfortable. But this is actually a benefit for the organization, and this is just beginning to be recognized. And one of the important things is, of course, not just in academia, but also in industry. Industry is beginning to recognize that actually one of their biggest costs is staff turnover. It's bad enough that we lose 90% of women in research and have problems getting them back, for those of you who were in the earlier session. Industry too finds that one of its biggest costs is losing people and not getting them back, or not getting the right people, or actually not training and keeping the right people happy in the job. And this is where mentoring comes in, because you can manage expectations, you can embed the person better in the organization. Very often it's somebody senior in the organization, but it's an alternative path to management. So the key thing about all this is a mentor has to be a good listener, which is sometimes easier said than done, I have to say. So what are the mentee characteristics? Not everybody likes the idea of actually being mentored or having the need. But believe me, there is always a need, because you can always know more about the situation that you're in. It's always good to have a second or third opinion, and especially if you know that this opinion is an independent opinion. You have your structure. If you're in industry, you have your management structure. And universities are becoming increasingly structured. Universities are becoming increasingly like businesses. I taught for 2 years in America, and I was shocked to find out the most important thing about you is not the research you did, but about the number of grants that you got from NIH, and even the amount of clapping you got at a faculty meeting was dependent on the size of your grant. So Viktoria, who is our US expert, knows this to be the fact, but it was a shock to me. And the only mentoring I ever got was on the third day I was at the faculty, somebody came up to me and said, we're going to buy you a coffee machine, because the faculty, I used to come in early because to talk to Europe, you have to be, this was before the internet, I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm not old. The third day somebody came up to me quietly and said, don't make the coffee so strong, we're going to buy you a special coffee machine. So that was my mentoring. But it was important because, people knew that the coffee that I made wasn't going to give them a heart attack. So mentors matter, because for you, when you're in a situation and you're only there for a relatively short period of time, you immediately come into a tacit knowledge source. People who've been there a long time, people who know where room 33 is. I asked several people here how to get to this room. The only person who actually knew was the catering guy who was delivering the food, because he knew the layout of the building. So that's very important. Another important feature, as I already said, it's an alternative to line management. Line management has its interest. You never know quite what the guy is saying to you, what his motivation is. You know, is he trying to keep you? Is he trying to get rid of you? Does he want you to do something else? Is he managing a larger contract? Does he have the interests of the organization at heart, his department? So somebody else who gives you an independent opinion, gives you another link into the organization is very important. Now, there's a deliberate typo on the slide somewhere, as there was this morning. I believe the competition is for best poster, not the best poser. I kept my scarf on, hoping that I would get this. I'm sorry, Wales only beat England every 10 years, and they did it yesterday. So the alternative articulation channel is very important, but there's also requirements with that. The most important thing I found with people, but mainly this because I was the backstop, is that it's very important for the mentor to actually only deliver what they can promise, and always to connect, and always to come back to you. Because even if I couldn't help someone, at least I try to say, well, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? But always get back to somebody if you are a mentor. If you are a mentee, if you are willing to be mentored, try to formulate your questions so that you are in a clear situation, that you know where the advice is needed. It's very difficult to just say, oh, generally, you know, I don't know what I'm doing here, why am I here? Formulate the question so the person actually knows how they can help you. And in this day and age, also mentors and mentees, where every relationship can have a balance based on social and cultural differences, you have to be quite careful about where you can give advice and where not. So it's very important also for the person who needs or feels the need to be mentored to be clear. Think a little bit about your language that you use with your mentor, because very often there can be differences in language. I found out yesterday, looking somewhere in the streets here, I found it better to speak English and be a foreigner than to speak German, because that's my other language. Because if you're German for an Austrian, well, they don't particularly need to tell you where you should be going, except where you don't want to go. So that's quite an important thing. So it's a social process, but it has a structure, and think about that structure from both points of view, whether you want to be a mentor or a mentee. It's often confused with coaching. Coaching is quite specific, and when you come into a new situation, very often you might need a coach just to settle you down. For example, to get into the structure of the organization, into the rhythm, into the social pattern, to know what expectations are. So don't hesitate if coaching is offered as opposed to mentoring, but also be clear that coaching is more in the interest of the organization to bring you up to speed rather than to realize your full potential or your optimal situation. The most common reason why things fail, like everything else, of course, is communications. Either communications bypass each other, which can be solved by problems of language. Now, in this day and age, with social media and the internet, there's really no reason why people can't stay in contact, why you can't get somebody back, why somebody cannot get back to you. If there's a reason they're silent, it usually means they can't help you, but let them clearly tell you they can't help you if you have a problem. Then you can take the next step. All I can say is that there's been of all the cases I've been involved, is a resolution. If you have a third-party element involved, resolution is usually very easy, very pleasant. I think in my time, I had 10 years in the Marie Curie program, the number of handful of cases that we couldn't resolve with satisfaction of everybody is probably on the fingers of one hand. So that's a very positive thing. So it can be rewarding for everybody. There is more and more recognition of this. If you think it's something that you enjoy doing, go to your organization and say, look, I want to do this. Do you have a structure? Propose a little idea. Start in your department. Go to another department. There's also a great benefit in cross-fertilization of ideas, because your mentor probably is not a specialist in your subject matter. So, as I say, like anything else in life, it can be rewarding, but you only get out of it what you put in. And you already put a great deal into Marie Curie. You already put a great deal into the process. you know, you're already 1 in 10, so you're already superheroes, because 9 out of 10 don't succeed in Marie Curie. So just invest that extra little bit in helping yourself if you are in the middle of a fellowship. And then when you've done, just invest that little bit about extra knowledge that you've got about the process and help those who come behind you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is extremely insightful and helpful to get such a quick and thorough overview of mentoring. I want to kind of fly through quickly because of the time and ask Viktoria to come up and quickly present the GEMI project. Viktoria Bodnarova from Washington, coming from Washington. Here you go.
Can I have some water? Please. Thank you so much. Can I stay here? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk. I'm so excited to share the project that we have been working on for the past almost 3 to 4 years, actually, and then it actually came to reality, and I have something to share with you this year. I was at the MCAA annual meeting last year in Belgium, where I talked about the possibility of creating something called GEMI, the Joint European Mentoring Initiative, and the steps that we were taking towards having GEMI. So at the time, it was a little bit abstract. We kind of had an idea of what to do. We did a lot of brainstorming, and we hired experts to help us really materialize the ideas, but we didn't actually know how things are going to work out. So today I would like to share with you a story. It's not too long yet, but at least to give you an idea how we got there, what is the evaluation saying, and what's the state of the art. So as Matt mentioned, my name is Viktoria Bodnarova. I'm the co-founder and the managing director of GEMI. I'm just going to call it GEMI, not GEMI. It's just GEMI. So yeah, he became part in our lives. So yes, it's a him. We launched, by the way, I'm based in Washington, D.C. in the United States, so that's where the idea came about, but obviously because it's a European initiative, so we are working with the European research area. We launched GEMI in December 2017 at the 3rd annual meeting of the European Scientific Diasporas in North America at the French Embassy in Washington, D.C. We wanted to have a program that would be international, intersectorial, interdisciplinary, and inclusive. So all the I's that you could actually think of, we put together, and that's how we were managing to get the program out. We opened the calls for mentees in late May 2018. And we wanted to open it to all the European researchers that are based in North America. So because we are there, so we wanted to target the European researchers that are based in the US and Canada. Because we wanted to start with a pilot, not having funding for GEMI, but having it as on a voluntary basis, as many of you have already heard that many projects are starting at least like that. So you put a lot of work into additional things that then change the world, so I still believe in them. We decided to actually partner with Marie Curie Alumni Association. So that was basically what happened last year at the annual meeting of the MCAA, where I presented what we want to do. I presented how we want to do the matching, and the Marie Curie said, okay, well, we already have started to think about, or you have already established at the time the MCAA Academy, and you were looking for mentors. And we said, well, while you are in the process of making that happen, then perhaps we could already use that potential and try to see if your mentors would be interested in mentoring our mentees within GEMI. So that's what happened. And within the MCAA, the call for mentors was extended, and we had a wonderful result, and a lot of people were interested, and they said, yes, we want to be part of GEMI and we want to try the pilot. So the mentees were from North America, and the mentors were from the MCAA database of mentors. Then the matching happened. We knew that because it's a pilot, we want to do only a small number of pairs. So we decided to go for 5, so for 10 people in total. We had 35 people that applied for a mentee. So after the call for mentees, we had 35 people. And out of the mentors, I think we had like over 70 people that were interested. So that was very successful. In terms of the whereabouts of them, the mentors, 4 of them were, all of them Europeans, 4 of them based in Europe, 1 European based in Japan. And in terms of the mentees, 4 Europeans were based in the US and 1 in Canada. So then we started with the program, with the pilot, and we said, okay, let's do 3 months at the beginning, and then we will see how things are going to go. So we prepared the guidelines, we prepared all the paperwork for them. By we, I'm talking about the management team that consisted of 5 people. And so we were working on the paperwork and the administration, and then we started. We're so excited because we didn't know how things are gonna go and how it will work out. Whether, you know, people being really far away from each other, if that will work. But eventually, I think it did. So, and the last point on the timeline before I go into a little bit more details about the pilot is that we had. We presented the results of the GEMI pilot at the 4th annual meeting of the European Scientific Diasporas in Washington, and we had invited 1 mentor and 1 mentee to talk about their experience as well. So that was basically the in-person meeting with some of them. In terms of type of mentoring that we put into the call for mentees, and obviously subsequently we informed the mentors as well, we decided to look into 4. As you can see on the slide, we looked into research career development, into industrial mentoring, so people that wanted to transition, especially from academia to industry. Then we had also the geographical location, if they needed to be mentored on that. And then the 4th was mentoring on networking. And in the parentheses, you can see the percentages of the results, of the responses out of the 35 mentees that filled in the questionnaire, what they would like to, what kind of mentoring they would be interested in. So we then put together an evaluation, and we sent it out to all the members, and we asked them to fill it in as often as possible. Because it was a pilot, we wanted them to fill it in every month, so we have some kind of a feedback and we know maybe where to go, what to change, is it working, is it not working, what do they need, is there something we as a management team can help out, is there something that is missing while they are going through their mentoring sessions. So in 3 months, we received 17 responses, which we were really, really happy about. We had 8 times the evaluation form was filled by a mentee and 9 times by a mentor. After the evaluation form, we could see that the communication, the frequency of communication was on average 3 to 4 times.
during these 3 months. And the ways they communicated was mainly Skype or a lot of emails. There was also a possibility in some cases of an in-person meeting, and also they were using WhatsApp because, as I mentioned, the mentees were in North America and the mentors were on the other side of the Atlantic, most of them. And I wanted to share really quickly with you a couple of questions after the evaluation. So we asked, for example, how has your overall experience with the mentoring program been so far? So I added in the parentheses the answer by the mentee. The first two are by mentee, and the last one is by a mentor. So far they have been excellent. I've become much more knowledgeable about the academic job process in Europe. So they have been really good feedbacks in terms of what the overall experience has been. Another question so far: how has this program contributed to your research career development in your current professional capacity, in valorizing your professional experience, and leveraging personal experiences for success, strategic thinking, and networking? So the green is very good, and then the purple is for excellent. So most of them were in the range of these two colors. Another question that we asked: what aspects of this program were most useful or valuable? So a mentor said the possibility to value my own experience and share it with others. Many mentees actually said career development, career planning. They were able to actually meet amazing Marie Curie fellows because the mentors were either part of the Marie Curie alumni or current fellows, and they have really inspired these mentees to look into the Marie Curie programs and help them go through the process. So, and the last one was being matched with a mentor who works closely to the field I'm interested in working after graduation and sharing learning from the mentor's experience and challenges. So what are the next steps for us at the moment? Because we are done with the pilot, most of the pairs would like to continue in 2019 as well. But because we have been working on a voluntary basis, we would like to create a nonprofit out of GEMI. So that would be something that we'll be looking into. Obviously, it comes with establishing a board, a committee, and we would like to have a matchmaking tool. Hopefully a software, because the matchmaking right now was done by hand or in person. So basically we didn't have a machine to do it for us, which for 5 pairs was still okay. But if we want to expand and we want to do more, we will definitely need to look into a matchmaking tool. And obviously it comes with the fundraising for all the things that we are envisioning. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from a management team member, which I perhaps can read for you. Science has no borders. My hope for GEMI is that there will be no limits. My hope is that going forward, there will be many helping hands that can help GEMI tackle the challenges ahead. I think that we should all pull forces together to build a global mentoring initiative to benefit researchers of all disciplines, of all career stages, in any geographical location, from any country, with any citizenship, or doing research anywhere in the world, with the goal to support globally mobile researchers. So this was said last December at an annual meeting, which sounds amazing, and it's always very emotional when I hear people talking about what can be done and what can be established. So hopefully we can go forward, and also with your help we can make GEMI a bigger dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I want to ask Agegi to come up and speak a few minutes. I think we'll run a bit long, so I think we can stay here after, because I would like to also do a panel, but I think we should also go through this presentation and this one.
No, just the website.
Oh, it's just one.
Did you download that from your email? Oh,
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it's just one slide. Okay. Oh.
Thanks. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually Tirumani from Erasmus Mundus Association. This year, we are working very closely with Marie Curie for this conference as well to attend and get our members to benefit from the attendance of such a wide community of researchers. So in my mentoring program, Erasmus Mundus, what we are, we have the Erasmus Mundus Masters, and we also have the Erasmus Mundus joint doctoral degree that now has kind of gone into Marie Curie as well. And we have over 18,000 members all around the world. And obviously there is a need for mentoring. What I would say is Erasmus Mundus, I think most of you would know the difference with Erasmus Mundus Masters and the normal Masters. It's very tailored and it's very high quality, I would say, because the Erasmus Mundus programs are scrutinized by the European Commission, so they have to maintain the high quality. And the content is sometimes different, because they include internship, mandatory internship, some of the courses, that too within 2 years or 1.5 years. And they also ensure that projects, that is dissertation, are research oriented, because Erasmus Mundus programs, obviously with the joint doctoral as well, we want the master's students to become budding researchers and obviously to go and do Marie Curie scholarship, DAD, or things like that. Many actually do, including Pavlo, who won the Young Research Award, European Research Award of last year, who has been Erasmus Mundus alumnus and then did his Marie Curie. One of the challenges we have is Erasmus Mundus is everyone is mobile. And mobility is global here. So we have students who come from all around the world, including rural places that you have never heard of, sometimes countries you've never heard of, or villages you've never heard of within a country. And they come with a certain specific background, obviously, and there's language barriers, there's cultural barriers, educational background barriers, financial barriers, how they understand what higher education in Europe means. There are barriers at many levels, which we obviously want to kind of alleviate and provide support for that. Now, why we provide the support is we are run by volunteers. I think we have the same challenges as that native scientists volunteers have, but we do have Erasmus Mundus wedding and babies, by the way. That's the difference. Lots of babies actually already. But we do have sleepless nights, as you said. It's run by volunteers, and how we sustain that. The need for it is that services within universities are very much tailored to their 99.9 student population who are students who are not mobile. And or some of the students do take mobility, but they take mobility for a semester or a year. But when we're talking of Erasmus Mundus, these students take mobility to 3-4 universities events. So we are talking of consortia that could consist of 8 universities in 8 different countries. So for example, there is a consortium that has 8, that's what I was saying, and then associate partners from 4 other countries. So students could go to any of these countries, and obviously the support department in these universities differ. They are in different countries, have different legislation by the government, HE legislation, policies, and even within the universities their own policy that differ. And obviously their support is targeted towards their own students. And students who are mobile, the issue there, the challenges is that Erasmus Mundus students, they struggle a lot. So let's say I'm a student, I'm new, I'm from Mauritius, by the way. and I come to France, for example, and I have a semester of 3 months, and then in the middle of my semester of 3 months, I already have to start thinking of getting my visa to Spain, for example, next, how to sort out my accommodation in Spain, how to sort out how I will travel to Spain, and from my own personal experience, which was 13 years back, I think, I've never traveled to Europe before. When I went to UK, the first time I ever took a train in my life, there's no train in Mauritius, okay? The very first time I took a train in my life was when I had to go to the Greek embassy. So I was freaking out. I had to travel peak time, and I obviously during that semester, I was missing all my lunch hours because I had to sort out visas, and I had to sort out getting a medical clearance, police clearance, everything for my next visa, and things like that. So they don't actually get to go to support services that exist in university because they don't have time. And also when they do find the time to do it, it's not tailored to them because support staff sometimes are not trained to deal with mobile students, and they don't know what to actually tell them. And the issues we have, for example, is mobile students in Erasmus Mundus. So each consortium has like 15 scholarships that they can give, and they have to give 3 to a European student and 12 to a non-European student. And when we talk of mentoring there, what we have to think is, actually they might be able to stay in Europe, or they might not be able to stay in Europe, or if they do stay in Europe, which country would they be able to fit in without having much visa issues? For example, we have Brexit right now, okay? So students who are in UK right now and want to think of working or doing research afterwards, that's a big issue right now. So where do we go? So will they allow us or not? That's a big issue. And so we struggle on that, and that's why this support in EMLA exists, and we now are working with consortia to reinforce their institutional support, kind of reinforcement really. And one challenge we do have is both our mentors and our mentees are mobile. So our alumni are mobile. I'm mobile. I keep moving. It feels like it's in my blood now. I did an Erasmus Mundus and I keep moving, like being in staff or whatever. That's what I do now. I know now. And it's very challenging because everything has to be virtual. And when we're talking of, let's say, somebody who's in Indonesia and somebody who's in US, they have great potential of mentor-mentee matching. But then time zone is an issue. And obviously we do have language because we have students who they want, for example, I said, I just saw Miriam here, I thought of agroforestry. So they want to go to do agroforestry, but they don't, I think you're based in Montpellier, but they don't talk French very well. And Ibrahim is here, so we have a student who is from Nigeria, maybe not speaking French very well, but that's what they want to do. And then we connect them with somebody French speaking, and language becomes an issue, and time zone and everything. And very often in Erasmus Mundus, also what happens is we have to, mentoring becomes a bit of coaching because we have to do both. It becomes kind of intertwined in some way, and there are cases where you start talking of career and then suddenly it starts becoming kind of family planning. The female researchers here in the audience would know what I mean. So if you want to do a PhD or a postdoc, well, it's like, do I plan to have a family? Things like that. Which country would it be best to so suddenly mentoring becomes something else. So we have these challenges that I guess everyone else in mentoring have. But
I want to transition to the panel.
Yeah, sure.
The feedback that you're giving is really broad, and I want to give the opportunity to. But thank you very much. Yeah, thank you again for providing. Stay here. Can you stay here? Okay, Mike. can you come up as well, please? Okay. So I'll try and run around with the microphone again. And I want to thank each of the speakers for the contribution. I think we had a nice perspective of mentoring from the GEMI perspective of international mobility mentoring, and also from Beghelli, and also Mike with the overview. I will start with a question I think a lot of people have, so I'll try and answer it as best as you can. So we at MCAA have been trying to start a mentoring program for quite some time now. And we have a platform, and we had last year a cohort, but we never actually executed the mentoring. And now we have set up a platform, but what we realized is something that they all alluded to: we don't have a good strategy. And so at the board meeting on Friday, we decided to spend the next few months to actually identify that strategy and make sure that we don't start something that we can't actually deliver. And so Maria from the board and Murat and Nehama, who are not here, are taking this on as a task, and this is very urgent for us right now. And one thing that I get out of this is we need to talk to them and actually partner with them, because what GEMI is doing is already kind of a microcosm of what we want to offer, to have mentoring for mobile researchers. That's our network. And Beghelli, as you described, you're already doing something like this. And Mike is really an asset that we should be contacting more often and getting his insight. And so let me go to Jenny. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jenny. So the question is for all three of you, and also for you, Matt. So I'm an alumna of both the Erasmus Mundus and then, of course, of the Marie Curie. I was a mentor for the Erasmus Mundus, and I am a mentee for the Marie Curie. So I guess my question is, I mean, you've answered part of it, but maybe, because on one hand, I want to continue mentoring. I haven't heard from the person I mentored for quite some time, but I do want to continue helping out, because I think there is this transition here that we already finished. But on the other hand, I cannot be a mentor. I really want to be a mentee for Marie Curie, and this is something that I think needs to be defined, like when can you become a mentor for one and a mentee to the other. So I guess that's the question. Thank you.
I can try and answer. I guess you're trying to say, can you be a mentor and a mentee at the same time? I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with that. It depends that every relationship in terms of mentoring is different. And if you have something to provide to somebody in terms of your experience, your professional experience especially, then of course you could be a mentor, you're doing that. And at the same time, you have your own needs as a professional, as a researcher. And so if you identify your needs and your wishes for a mentor, and through a platform or through the community, then I think this makes sense. I think that's a positive thing. Okay. I'll come to you and then you, okay.
Hello, thank you so much. I want to ask Viktoria, what sort of matchmaking software are you thinking about? Because I'm part of the mentor-mentee program for the Society for Conservation Biology in the African section. And currently we just do our pairing manually, like really finding the mentors and the mentees on paper. But I've learned from you today that there are matchmaking softwares, and I would be glad to hear from you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. We will actually, we are putting together a working group on that to look into the possibilities of the softwares that are existing, because there's not only one, but there's actually plenty of different platforms that exist out there. There are different online tools that either come from North America or they come from Europe. So there are a lot of them, and obviously it will all depend on the financial situation as well, because most of them are not going to be free, but we'll have to pay for them. So I don't have like an exact name for you that I can share right now, but if you maybe stay in touch, and once we have it, I'll be very happy to share it with you.
Actually, one of the things that caused us problems for our mentoring was we were looking at a vendor, and then we got feedback from the commission, and within the organization decided that we shouldn't do that, that we should build it internally because we have our own platform. So that's one of the challenges, is we're building a tool, but we need to have something to go with it, like guidelines, code of conduct, a vision. So
this is for Viktoria, right? Viktoria and Mike. So I worked with an NGO. We tried to set up a mentoring platform, and it was very difficult in guiding public health practitioners and public health scientists. And one of the among the difficulties that we encountered was defining the rubric for actually matching mentors and mentee, and also defining the limits of the relationships, and also the amount of physical interface, because there has to be a convergence in the career at some point, because it's very difficult, and when do you diverge also? So my question is, how did you handle these situations? And in terms of defining the limits, what were the most severe effects of failed mentorship?
Okay, maybe Mike, you also have some input here.
So in terms of the mentees, the call was opened by us, by the management team. So we created basically a questionnaire within that call. And we had, I think, about 10 questions that we asked the mentees. And because we knew it's going to be a pilot program for only 3 months, and that we are starting, and it will be only 5 pairs. So we asked, for example, one of the questions of the mentees, what do you think your goal might be by the end of this mentoring, this pilot GEMI program? So what would you like to achieve within the period of 3 or 4 months? And then we also asked them, for example, what kind of qualities you can bring in as a mentee. And then on the other hand, we asked that, what qualities are you bringing in as a mentor into the mentoring program? So we looked at, the quality things that the mentee and the mentor can bring into a relationship, because obviously it's a human relationship that might work and might not work, and we didn't know at the beginning whether we'll be doing the matching in the right way or not. But because we have the 4 different parts, 4 different types of mentoring. And then we asked also the mentors what they would like to, so they had to click what their preference is. So that was the first thing that we looked at. If you're research career development, but the mentor is only industrial, then that might perhaps not be the right match. So we looked at that as a first indicator, and then we did the goals, and then we did the quality, and obviously we looked at their motivational quotes as well from both sides. We don't have any failures yet because, thanks God, all 5 pairs actually said that it was a perfect match. So we feel really proud of the system that we did. So hopefully we'll continue that way.
One of the symptoms of not so much failure of mentorship, but absence of mentorship, is that people actually leave research. And one of the things we realized about 8 to 10 years ago is the loss of women in science. Because when you come to the point where you have to decide between career and family and work-life balances, there was nobody there to help you, to say, well, this is what you can do, this is how you should do it, or these are the facilities. And also I have to say, very often the facilities weren't there. So in Marie Curie, we've introduced a new restart series where once you've left science, you can come back in. And you are mentored during the first year or so. You can go half-time research, half-time getting up to speed. So it's not really a failure of mentoring, but the absence of mentoring can sometimes be a failure too. So it's something you have to bear in mind. Don't put yourself in a position where you are so far that you are beyond mentoring, should I say. It's never hurts to ask a question. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
I wouldn't say I have seen failures, but I have come across, because of cultural barriers, and also, the issue with cultural barriers is that certain cultures, people are very submissive, and sometimes if you do have someone who's very submissive and just nods, and actually, because when you're being mentored, you have to reflect as well, and if you're not reflecting in your own career path and you're just being told, you kind of just accept it. that has been cases that I've seen. So, which we want to avoid, obviously, but it's sometimes difficult because mentoring, we don't get involved in the mentoring process, so we have to do evaluations and check that.
I'm going to get 2 more questions, and then one from Maria and one back here. Yes. Yeah,
Okay, maybe I can sneak 2. First, I wanted to play like a devil's advocate and say, like, we researchers, why not build a database that the mentees and mentors could by themselves sort by a well-defined set of parameters and, for example, I don't know, pick 5 that they like, and then the mentor does the same, and in a way let them sort themselves out for matching. And a second one, which I think could be part of the answer, is how about the personal skills in communication and some kind of openness? So the things that are not well perhaps defined by a simple questionnaire, but some kind of maybe not necessarily a full-blown personality test, but a way that people communicate, because that might be a biggest barrier in the failed mentorship relationships.
I'm going to take another question, and then that'll be the last question, and we can answer all of them. Okay? Okay.
Thank you. I'm Naya Abzanakwi. My question is actually, it's a continuation of a comment about women who have stopped research and they can come back. It's something like that. But is there any time limit or duration for that? Yeah.
Okay. So the first question was about developing a database which could be searchable between mentors and mentees, and another question about the time limit when people can re-enter, especially women can re-enter science. And your second question was?
Well, how about making clear that the communication style
right. And so I guess it's part of the matching process. So I'll hand it over to you 3, okay?
I'll just answer that part because it's technically easy. A minimum of 1 year out of the loop. As far I haven't looked at the latest call because I'm retired, but there was no limit to that, but it was generally considered to be 5-7 years would probably be the limit, but it depends very much on the science, and the way of getting back up to speed. But the idea was that it was the cycle of getting the kids off to school, basically. And it's not only for women. We found men want to come back too. In UK particularly, men were encouraged to start companies, split off from universities, and then they actually found that they prefer to be in the laboratory, and there was no way back. So it's a 2-way loop, but 5-7 years. But if you find someone to build you back into that path, that's really the criteria.
So I wanted to react to that. When we were brainstorming at the very beginning about 2-3 years ago, then we were even thinking about something similar that you're saying, not to have a software that we buy somewhere. We either make it in-house through the researchers that we already have, or have, a Tinder for mentoring. So, swipe left, swipe right. So something, on an app basis, because now everyone lives in an electronic, technologically advanced world. So that might be something that, they can obviously decide. We just need to put in the criteria of what they need to fill in as a profile. And then as a second question, in terms of the personal communication, the next phase that we are thinking about, and perhaps that might help, is to actually have an initial, once they are matched already, have an initial in-person or Skype meeting through like a video conference, and us being there as well as a part of a management team, and see if perhaps we could facilitate the communication in between them.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry it went a bit late. It was very rich in content, and I appreciate your patience. Please thank our panelists again. And I hope to have good news in the next few months about our mentoring. Thank you. Oh, thank Marina. She was our rapporteur. I forgot to say that. Marina from the German chapter is the rapporteur, and she will give a report about this session in the closing today.
No problem. Yeah,